Fierce clashes broke out between Occupy protesters and the police last night and early this morning on Longwar Road near Admiralty. It came after the Federation of Students and Scholarism announced that they were stepping up their campaign in their fight for genuine universal suffrage. Well, you're looking at live shots right now from Admiralty, where things are looking calmer tonight. This is in sharp contrast with yesterday. Police said 40 people were arrested in the protest overnight and 17 police officers were injured while managing the crowd. Authorities also said a number of weapons were seized from protesters. Evelyn Leung tells us more about how the clashes unfolded overnight.
Protesters broke through police cordons at about 10 last night and rushed onto Longwoo Road near the chief executive's office. Police tried to usher the protesters back onto the pavement, but their calls fell on deaf ears. More protesters ran onto the road, bringing traffic to a halt. Police then used batons and pepper spray to disperse the crowd. However, they were met by protesters who used metal barriers to charge at the police line. Authorities managed to subdue some protesters, but not without any injuries. Shortly after, the protesters charged the police cordon once again. Some even threw objects, including eggs and powder, at police officers. At around 1:30 in the morning, police used batons and tear gas to clear out the crowd. Some protesters responded by directing fire extinguishers at the officers. Yet many demonstrators ran off the street onto the pavement. Authorities then arrested a number of people. One of the two lanes on Longwar Road was reopened to traffic just before 3 a.m. Yet about 45 minutes later, the protesters retook Longwoo Road. They used wooden boards and rubbish bins, among other things, to block off the thoroughfare. Some protesters also broke into a nearby construction site and took away bricks and other objects. At about 7 a.m., police sprayed water on the protesters and then drove them off the road towards Tamar Park. Police subdued more people. A protester sustained injuries to his head. Police eventually pushed the crowd back to the bridge linking Admiralty Center and the central government offices. At around 7:30, Longwoo Road was reopened to traffic. However, the chaos wasn't over yet. Outside an exit of the Admiralty MTR station, scuffles broke out between protesters and 3 off-duty policemen in plain clothes over the removal of barricades. One officer ended up lying on the ground. He was later carried away on a stretcher. One suspect was arrested while 2 fled the scene. The police meanwhile said it had confiscated a number of weapons from the protesters throughout the night. Among the items seized are metal rods, wooden sticks, wooden boards with protruding nails, and bricks. We walked around the area near Longwoo Road and found different objects left behind by the demonstrators, including wooden boards wrapped with cardboards. The police claimed the protesters used these weapons to attack them. Evelyn Leung, TVB News.
Student leaders have acknowledged that their plans to block government buildings failed. Meanwhile, government officials condemned the protesters' actions and appealed to them to leave the occupied areas. Ronnie Samtani reports.
The Hong Kong Federation of Students admitted this afternoon that their plan to disrupt government operations had failed.
We could, of course, say that we have done it for a short time of period, but ultimately, the occupiers, they are eliminated by the police to other spots. So we'll say, the plan, it requires and it has lots of room to improve, and it is, in a sense, it fails at last.
Chow also noted that the strength of the campaign has been waning since the start of the movement. The government issued a statement condemning the protesters for deliberately storming police cordon lines and blocking access to the central government offices and Lung Wah Road. It said such acts show blatant disregard for the law and endanger public safety. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying, along with other government officials, also criticized the protesters' actions. Leung said that the government has been extremely patient about the occupation over the past 2 months, but people cannot tolerate it anymore, and there are increased calls for a clearance, he said. He appealed to the protesters to go home. Secretary for Security Lai Chun-kwok said the police will take decisive enforcement action to restore public order. He said the protesters' behavior is a complete departure from the peaceful, nonviolent principles the organizers had claimed to uphold.
I think what happened last night fully demonstrates that it has far, far away gone beyond what they have declared. The police, after repeated warnings, have to take resolute actions. They have no choice because it is a duty to restore law and order.
It is obvious that these troublemakers have committed the violent act in a premeditated and organized manner. Their behaviors were completely irrational.
Operations at the central government offices resumed this afternoon, but because obstacles remained at the escalators linking the bridge to the entrance, civil servants had to take a longer route to get back to work.
It creates some inconvenience for us. I'm going to take another way to go back to the office.
Pan-democratic lawmakers have been allowing the students to use their offices and conference rooms in the Legislative Council building to discuss their protest actions. A group of pro-establishment lawmakers criticized the students' actions last night and expressed opposition to the student leaders being allowed to enter the complex.
Actually, the Legislative Council both has the privilege as well as the duty to ensure that actually we are upholding the rule of law. We cannot harbor anyone to instruct a crime to occur.
The group called for the LegCo Secretariat to get a court injunction to bar members of scholarism and the Hong Kong Federation of Students from entering the complex. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.